Welcome in. This is Hype Factor, a Fantasy Critic podcast for all the Fantasy Critic enthusiasts out there who just can't get enough talking about Fantasy Critic. I'm one of your co-hosts, John 32, and I am joined by my good friend, Marcus O'Neill. Marcus, I got only one question for you today. Are you ready?
Not in the slightest. I feel pretty good about, a little bit of prep here. I haven't actually participated in any drafts yet myself. I know you had one yourself the other night. So I feel a little bit underprepared, but we're going to work through this together, John, tonight, and we're going to talk through some things and hopefully come up with some good advice for people.
That's right, enthusiasts. It is draft season. We are here to break it all down. For those of you not familiar with the show, if you're listening for the first time, this is Hype Factor. We break down Fantasy Critic and we give you all the inside tips, tricks, strats that you're going to need to compete in your Fantasy Critic League. Maybe you're planning for that draft. Maybe you're just getting started. Maybe you're a seasoned veteran of Fantasy Critic, but we're here to help. So without further ado, this is episode 16 of Hype Factor. It's the last episode of 2025, or I guess the first episode of 2026 of the 2026 season. Depends on how
Both
you look
work,
at
both
it.
work.
Yeah, both work. So the topic this month, everybody, is a season preview of 2026. Let's get it going.
Topic of the month.
All right, Marcus. So maybe the first thing we should say is, we've been doing this for just over a year now. And if we do have some new listeners or people that are jumping in for the first time and you're looking for what the heck is Fantasy Critic, what should I do when I'm drafting, I'm going to point everybody back to episode 1 and 2 of Hype Factor, where we did a pretty, I would say, thorough job of breaking down what this thing is and how it works and what you need to do in order to get started. I think that's a good resource that people need to go back to if they're really kind of starting out the gate here.
I think so. I think I haven't listened to it since we released the episode, but I think we did a pretty thorough breakdown of like how to play Fantasy Critic. So if you're like completely new, that first episode I think will really kind of give you like a good base for understanding what the heck you're doing, because you've probably been recruited into a draft from your friends in one of the communities that you're a part of, and you're like, that sounds interesting. I'd love to play and play a game with my friends, but I really don't know what the heck I'm doing. So that, I think that episode 1 is going to give you the basics of what Fantasy Critic is, how to build your team, just kind of the general rules, different rule variations, things like that. So it kind of give you a really good base. And then we'll probably went into it in a little more depth than we will, although we'll review some of this stuff as well today, but
Yeah.
just kind of general draft strategy, things like that, kind of things that you want to kind of keep in mind as you're heading into your draft.
Yeah, and that's a great segue because that's what we want. I just wanted to kick off. If you go back to that episode 2, there were some, high level rules or ideas that you should keep in mind when you're planning for a draft. One was, and we're not going to rehash everything, but one was know your league rules. Familiarize yourself with, what type of game slots you're going to have to fill, know exactly how many games you got to draft, and do that research to get ready so that you're not panicking and when you're having to make your selections. The other one was making sure that you're incorporating and calculating risk for those games that don't have release dates. Marcus and I put a premium on mitigating risk and finding games that have good early release dates that you can confidently trust. You're going to hear some of that tonight again, and that's an important thing to consider when you're going through this. Third, don't ignore the indies. You're going to hear us talk about a bunch of indies tonight. And I think just like 2025, I expect indies to really guide and lead in terms of what happens in 2026. And then finally, we always talk about the zeitgeist, the fact that we're not in Fantasy Critic choosing the games that we're going to like in 2026. Our personal opinions out the window. We're rating and we're deciding how the critics are going to rate those games. So just remember that when you're thinking about this, you got to put your heart to the side, use that noggin, and just make sure you're thinking about how critics are going to view that game, not yourself. Marcus, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, just to kind of jump off that, like it doesn't really matter how excited you personally are about a game. Maybe it does, but generally speaking, you want to try to push that aside. Just get that a little bit out of your thinking and try to get a sense of what the general discussion is around a game and the general excitement or the general, frustration or unexcitement about a game. This really is trying to put your biases, your own personal biases about a particular game, put that to the side and try to kind of come in as unbiased as possible. Because at the end of the day, we want to win our leagues, right? It's one thing to have a roster full of games that you like or are going to enjoy playing. It's another thing to win your league. We're here to win our leagues, right?
Yeah. In the in the words of Shorzy, winning is fun, and it's the ones that you remember. So yeah, let's
That's
uh,
right.
let's
Yeah.
let's let's keep it focused on winning the leagues. So with that kind of parked, uh, let's get into it. And we're going to start. For those that have listened to us since the beginning, we're going to talk about the locks. We're going to talk about your boomer busts. We're going to cover the sleepers and the avoids and all the good stuff that you might want to be thinking about when you're going into a draft. But we're going to start with talking about what our number one overall pick is going to be this year, if we were so blessed to get that number one overall pick. But last year, I think coming into 2026, there was a lot of certainty of what it was going to be. And then things have changed slightly. So, would you like to go first, Marcus? Do you want to talk about what is, in your estimation, the number one overall pick for 2026?
Yeah, if I am so lucky as to get the number one overall pick, John, I am going to be picking Resident Evil Requiem. And there's a few reasons for this. I think like you can certainly make a case for a few other games kind of fitting in here, but I really like Resident Evil Requiem for several reasons, let's say. And you're going to hear me probably start to repeat some of this stuff. I think it's a very like unrisky pick, right? We
Mm,
know it's the release date is coming out pretty soon. I think it's February 27th. So it's pretty early in the year. Even if it happens to get delayed, there's no way it's getting pushed out of this year. You're getting points this year. You got the first overall pick. That is like absolutely key in my head. You should not be looking at picking anything with that first overall pick that might not have the chance of coming out this year. Resident Evil games, particularly in recent years, have scored very, very well. So we've got kind of like a track record of this franchise, of the developer, scoring games really well. So Resident Evil Village scored an 84. That's the low end. Resident Evil 4 Remake was a 92, beloved game, but the remake 92, and then Resident Evil 7 Biohazard 86. Like, and then you can go back even a few more years. Um, Kind of the black sheep of the franchise is Resident Evil 3 remake. That one was a little bit lower. I don't have that score in front of me. I think it was high 70s, but Resident Evil 2 remake also low 90s. So you've got a Resident Evil game kind of in this, new era of Resident Evil. You're doing pretty good. And so I like that track record. I like the early date. It's very unrisky and I think it has a tad higher potential of a ceiling just to get a little bit higher, maybe a point or two higher than the game that you're going to talk about, John.
all right, let me get into it. So, for me, following a similar track, my number one pick, if I was in the same position that we were just talking about, would probably be Saros. This is a game that has been showing really well. There's a lot of momentum behind it. Returnal scored an 86, and people love that game. I feel like the hype has only kind of continued to get behind it since it's come out, and I feel like this has potential to exceed where Returnal ended. So it just feels like a very safe. But you know what? When I was looking at this, I didn't realize the range for Resident Evil. I thought it was a little bit lower. I didn't see the some of
Mm.
those higher 80s and then in the early low 90s. So I thought actually Saros was. But you make a very compelling point there, Marcus. But I just feel like Saros, it has a little bit of, Raul Coley's in it. It has a little bit of weight behind it. There's a little bit of excitement and hype involved. So I'm feeling pretty good with Saros number one, only because like I still feel like there's maybe some questions around Resident Evil, but nothing bad. Nothing bad, nothing like, you know, I feel like these to me were pretty interchangeable as number one or two.
Yeah.
I'd be feeling pretty good either way. Saros has a release date of, I believe, April 30th. So similarly, early in the year, you got a little bit of space, even if it gets pushed back a little bit. But I'm feeling
Well,
pretty
and it's
good.
already been bumped a month,
Yeah,
because it kind of got very
yeah,
quietly pushed back a month. I have a hard time seeing if it is a delay for Saros that it
yeah,
goes much further. Yeah.
yeah. It just seems like polish, right? So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'd be happy taking Resident Evil 9 or Requiem second. Maybe we'll just quickly address the elephant in the room, and that
Well,
is
because
GTA
probably
6.
people are like screaming at
Yeah,
their earbuds. What about GTA 6? Well, what about GTA 6, John?
yeah. No, I think listen, when I look at, I think it's early days. So as we record this, we're still in 2025. There's going to be a hell of a lot of drafts that take place over the next couple weeks. Um, I think Resident Evil 9 actually is currently the highest hype factor. I don't know if it's number
Yes.
one draft. Like we'll have to go back and look at the stats or call Steve, but it definitely had the highest hype factor. So GTA 6 earlier, let's before the last delay, was probably a guaranteed number one overall pick for this year. When it had that May date, it was like a lock for number one.
Yep.
Obviously, it's been bumped to a November date. Let's say mid-November date. I just think the risk is too high. This is when we get into the value for money proposition or value for points proposition. Like, we know that if GTA comes out, I think it's pretty safe to say your base, your floor is probably a 92, right? So it's
Yep.
probably at the high
Yep.
end of what these games potentially reach, these other games we just mentioned. And its ceiling could be in the 95, 96 range. And when you're talking about Fantasy Critic, that's like quite a significant number of points that could really just lock you in. But there's also the chance that it gets bumped by a month and a half or 2 months, and you're left with 0 points again for that
Yep.
number one overall pick. So I guess to your earlier comment, Marcus, I would just feel better and more comfortable knowing that if I had the first overall pick, that I am actually netting out some significant points, going with a low risk strategy, potentially giving up, let's say, an additional 10 points that's out there that's floating, but with the guarantee that I'm actually going to hopefully get something from that rather than potentially 0 points. Like I said, if it was May, it's a different story. Uh, but November's, I think it's November 17th or 19th. It's just it's cutting it too close for me.
Yeah. I am in 100% agreement. Yeah, it's the 19th that it's
Yeah.
scheduled to be. And so like if we find out it's delayed, it probably won't be like right up to, but say it's a month before,
Yeah.
then you're potentially even risking like even if you are eligible to drop it, what are you replacing it with? There might not be much left kind of at that end of the year to be
Mhm.
able to swap in. So yeah, it's I never like games that are this far out that have a specific date attached to them late
Yeah.
in the year. Like it is just like I don't we haven't run the numbers on this, but I feel like it's as likely that it gets delayed that it actually hits the date, and maybe even more
Yeah.
likely that it gets delayed based on previous games that we've seen. I think of one as Starfield got bumped. It was kind
Yeah.
of a November or date, and like I don't know, man. If I'm in a draft, I guess this is a kind of a general strategy. It touches on that risk thing. Like I want to play it pretty safe in the draft. It's like kind of like fantasy critic is like fantasy sports, right? You can't win the game in the first quarter, but you can lose it.
Mm.
And I think that picking GTA 6 that early in the first round, potentially a first overall pick, that could be losing you the year. I don't want to do that this
Yeah.
early. This is a
Yeah.
long season, right?
Yeah.
We've got lots of potential moves to make, and it's just not worth the risk for me.
Yeah.
So I'll let somebody else deal with that headache, and I guess I would encourage listeners to do the same because somebody's going to grab it. Somebody
Yeah.
is going to grab it very early.
And listen, like, so a couple of things to keep in mind here. One, you're probably, well, we'll talk about this a little later. I feel like you're probably safe not to get counterpicked. There might be someone out there risky enough to do it. but they're also risking their entire season. So if you do pick it up early, at least you have that benefit. And I think there's a when we talk about that value for points or algorithm there, the other thing is how far does it drop before you pick it up? Because I do still
Right.
think, right, like this is a first round pick for
Yeah.
somebody. If these games go, there's a few others that I might that we're going to talk about that don't have dates, right? Where I would still potentially put GTA above them because
Yeah.
better to at least have a date that you don't really confidently believe in versus like no date at all. So everybody's got to make that judgment call for themselves. But I guess for me, if you're ranking things one, two, three, at least on some level,
Yeah.
I have GTA 6 or maybe in the third or fourth spot for myself personally. But I think we've covered
Yeah.
off Resident Evil 9 and Ceros being, to me, better options. Maybe my own bias is showing. Maybe I'm just more excited for Ceros. We'll see.
Yeah, just to kind of maybe close the loop on that, I think that I'd probably have it a little bit lower, kind of a mid. I mean, I guess again, it depends on how many players are in your league, but say more that 5, 6, 7, 8 range for me, because I could imagine having 5 or 6 games that I might rather
Rather
have
have.
at this moment ahead of it. But I wouldn't push it out. I wouldn't. This isn't a game that I would completely avoid,
Yeah.
and isn't a game that I would not consider if it fell to me in the second round, of course. But
Yeah.
we're talking kind of like whether or not this is your first overall pick. And for me, it
It's
just
not.
doesn't kind of meet that criteria. Yeah.
I got you. I got you. So why don't we use that as a good segue to talk about some of those other picks that we know are locks on the season. Marcus, why don't you kick us off? You've got 3 games for each of these categories. We're going to try and talk about approximately 3 games. Why don't you go through your list and then I'll go through mine?
Sure. So our locks. So these are our games that we're really confident in. We think they're they're very safe. They're going to get you good points, and we're very confident of their release to come out this year. So these are, you know, ones that we're putting our stamp of approval on. The first one that I have is Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. As listeners will know, or soon find out, I'm not the Nintendo guy on this
Yeah,
podcast,
I was
so
going to
I'm
say,
kind of
the
going
hell?
on history, and so like I kind of got a little burned because one of my locks last year was Metroid Prime 4, and we kind of know that didn't quite live up to at least what I expected it to at the beginning of the year. Emblem games score well. Engage, which is the most recent one, only 81, but this is more like Three Houses, which scored an 89. I just have a feeling that this is going to be a much closer to an 89 than the 81. This is, I suspect, again, John, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. This could be Nintendo's big game for the year. And I feel like people are wanting another Fire Emblem Three Houses type experience. I think that game, again, it was an 89, but at least in our circles, people speak very highly of Three Houses. So I feel like this is a pretty safe bet for pretty good points. I think people are hungry for this game, and I think it's going to score well.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement.
Yeah.
As a Nintendo
Okay.
fan,
Okay.
I'm complete. I mean, like the game looks great.
Yeah.
It is a cool setting, which I think helps a lot. Looks like almost like a Roman or Greco-Roman type setting. I think that would be cool. Characters look really interesting, and I do think it's probably going to be a bit of a return to some additional. Like we don't know that much about it yet, but it does look more Three Houses ish, I guess. If you can try and approximate where they're going with things. The other thing is that there's no release date on it, but like Nintendo's pretty solid, especially with something like a Fire Emblem where if they're showing it in 2025, it's going to land within that, monthly cadence that they kind of got going at some point. I've got to assume we'll see it in a direct early in the year and we'll probably find a date for it. So I'm with you. For me, Fire Emblem is a lock. It's been a lock since they first showed it. Very happy with that.
Okay, the next one I have, we go from a platform that we're quite confident in to one that maybe we're a little bit more shaky ground on, and we go from Nintendo, we go to Xbox, and my next lock is Forza Horizon 6. I know that things haven't been the greatest for Xbox of late. They released a lot of games, a lot of their games scored pretty good, nothing like that blew your socks off last year, Yeah, I'm thinking of Avowed, Outer Worlds 2. What else? Help me out here, John. We had
Well, they had
Ninja Gaiden,
South of Midnight was
South of
also.
Midnight. Yeah, they're kind of all in that high 70s, low 80s range. But one franchise that always scores phenomenal is Forza Horizon. Both Forza Horizon 5 and 4 each scored 92 on Open Critic. I see no reason to think that Forza Horizon 6 won't be in that ballpark. So we're talking probably like high 80s at the absolute floor. The only question is whether or not it comes out. And I do think that there is a good chance that it comes out because it was actually kind of, for parts of last year, potentially rumored to even make 2025 a kind of a sneaky kind of drop. So I feel like it's probably pretty ready. We don't have a date yet. So that's maybe again not unlike Fire Emblem. We don't have a date, but otherwise I think if we had a date, this might be my number one
Yep.
pick,
Yep.
right?
That's fair. Yep.
And so like I think that I'm still pretty confident that Forza Horizon 6 is coming this year, and if it comes, this is as lock as locks are, you know.
I agree with you. And set in Japan, that's been the big rumor, right? Where
Yep.
I feel like this is another one where early in the year we're going to see something from Xbox that shows it. This is the one in terms of releasing in 2026 that I'm probably most confident in of what Xbox has shown, maybe with the exception of Halo campaign involved. But I agree with you. I think this is due to release in 2026, and I think to be fair, this is probably what I have at number three, just
Oh
GTA.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm with you 100% on Forza Horizon 6.
And so but for my third lock is probably not quite as confident as those other two, but I still think it fits solidly in that first round kind of echelon of games, and that is Control 2 or Control Resonant. Maybe this is a little bit of my bias creeping in, but I do really enjoy Remedy. They did have a bit of a miss last year with their FBC Firebreak multiplayer game, famously, right,
Famously.
John?
Yeah.
Famously. But their single player games score very well. The first Control, 84, which is actually going back, it was a little lower than I
Yeah.
expected it to be because people
Hmm.
talk very highly of this game. I think it has really kind of has quite the following and a little bit like Returnal you were talking about before, kind of like since its release, it's only grown in popularity. Alan Wake 2 as well. That game really, really did well. Scored an 89. I feel like Control Resonant, uh, I think the reception to it at the Game Awards was quite positive. And I feel like, there's a pretty decent chance it's coming out this year. I would personally be quite confident in picking it probably more in the latter half of the first round. And I feel like it's kind of going to be in that mid to high 80s range.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, this is the only one where I might disagree with the titling of the lock because of the date, right? This is the
mm,
one where I'm like, I'm not as certain that it's coming out this year, only because we just saw it.
right.
Do you know Remedy's track record at all with like how they show to release? I mean, I think they're pretty good. Like
Yeah,
Firebreak is
I don't have
insanely,
it off the top of my head, but they do release it
yeah, fairly
release
good
games
clip.
at a fairly steady
Yeah.
cadence. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not completely low on this. I think you're probably right. I might take it more like high second round myself, just
Yeah.
because there's other things I
Yep.
might take first. But yeah, it's definitely a good option to have. I feel comfortable, and I think this is another one where people are going to be very hesitant to counterpick it, despite the no date. So
Mm,
you give yourself a little bit of flexibility. Like that'd be a risky maneuver unless someone really had no faith in it. So yeah, no, that's a solid lineup if you're if you're so blessed to have that on your
yeah.
team. As for me, interesting that two of these actually ended up on my team in my first draft. So first off, kicking us off, Mina the Hollower. Maybe some people are surprised to hear that as a lock, but obviously it was famously pushed out of 2025. I think we all expect it to be relatively early in 2026 or the first half of 2026. I think when it does release, the expectations are high. Obviously, the developer has a good track record. Shovel Knight having scored 89, I think the hype is just as high for this game. It looks great, so hopefully the delay is really more about polish as they kind of signaled, rather than something more serious. And yeah, to me, it's like it's an easy one to add to a lineup. Yeah, I did it in the first round. I mean, I was low. I was pretty low down there in terms of selection, but at least we know I have a lot of confidence that it's going to come out, and that's going to do fairly well. I'm not really
Yeah.
concerned about that. Just lock in some points early on.
Yeah, I mean, I really like we were banging the mean of the hollower drum for six
Yeah,
months last year until it kind of got an unexpected, delay.
yeah,
I'd like to see a date, but I'm not really all that worried that it won't come out shortly here. I would be pretty surprised if we don't see a date that lands before the end of March or something like that. Like I feel
yeah,
like it's coming soon. They just want to be absolutely sure because they don't want to just have to potentially change it again. But yeah, I mean, I this kind of fits in that for me at probably in the same range as that is Control 2. Like kind of in that latter half of that
yeah,
first round, I could absolutely see taking Mina, and I don't think you can really go wrong with either of them. Like,
yeah,
flip a coin for me, anyways.
yeah. I just don't want people having like that bad taste in terms of the delay from 2025 to 2026, and then
Right.
overlooking it, right? I think that would be a mistake. So the second game I have that I want to talk about was Mugenics. So obviously, this is one that a lot of Fantasy Critic hardcore, if you're in the Discord, of Fantasy Critic Discord, they were talking about it. It drafted pretty well last year. It was picked up a bunch off of the waiver wire. This is, if you don't know, same one of the developers, I think, from Binding of Isaac. Those games are
Yep.
really beloved, had pretty good scores. This is like a cat-based game, which I think it just looks cool. I think it's pretty safe. I think the release date is now set for February. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Early February, February 10th. So, like, this is another one where for me, I feel pretty confident adding it to the team. I think it's going to do very well. Because of that early date, it's just that early points that I'm really happy with. I think we talked about that a bunch last year. So, yeah, that's one for me that I like. And I actually got it in one of my drafts already. So, happy with that.
So obviously you took this with your second pick, which
Yeah.
would have been kind of like the first half of the second round,
Yeah.
correct? So is that kind of where you envision this to tend to fall? Like, is this a first round pick? You have it as a lock. Would you have considered it as a first round pick?
I feel this is the thing. Like, I feel like the risk because of the early release date, because of the pedigree, because of the hype around it, I feel pretty solid that this is a lock to score me points. I guess the question is how many points. I think a lot of
Yeah.
times with people's first round picks, they want to make sure that they're knocking out of the park. That's not always possible because you don't really know. So I guess it just depends on how deep your league is, what the rule sets are, how things shake out. I don't know if I would take it in the first round. Like we just went through a whole slew, including our first overalls and GTA and a bunch of other things that would probably come ahead of it. But this is pretty solid to me. This is a pretty
Yeah, I
solid
the funny thing is like outside of the fact that it's probably not a game that everybody kind of that
is
plays
aware of.
maybe the
Mm,
the triple A, yeah, that is like is on
hmm
their radar. I think it like other than that, I think it does meet a lot of the
That's
criteria that we're looking
that's why I
for
wanted
a
to raise it
first
up.
round pick.
Yeah, that's why I wanted
Yeah.
to raise it up, right? Like I don't know if it's going to be the blueprints of the season or something and come in at a high 80, but if it does, it's sure going to outscore at least some of those other ones we've talked about where, they may not live up to the expectations. And we saw that a bunch last year. So I think I just wanted to give it the right kind of love to put it as a lock, whether, I wouldn't take it over some of the other games we've talked about, but I definitely have it up there and feel confident to have it in and hopefully it does well for the team. And the third one uh, is the Dusk Bloods. So this one might be a bit of a surprise to have it as a lock. I wanted to dive a little deeper, and like talking about second round maybe. Um, Obviously, this is a FromSoft game. It showed pretty well. It's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. So we've talked about the Nintendo Bump before. It's a game that
Yep.
there's a lot of hype and excitement for. The one thing is there's no date. It's just 2026. That gave me a little bit of pause. But the reason I like this one, similar to what we've talked about with some of the other games that aren't dated, FromSoft has this uncanny ability to deliver, new games within, I would say, a set time frame. I look back at something like Armored Core 6, which showed at the Game Awards and was out by the following fall, I believe, and scored an
Yeah.
85. right? And I remember this distinctly because I counterpicked Armored Core, being like, "There's no way
Thinking
this
there's no way it's
game,
coming
this
out. Yeah.
size of this game, is like they just showed it and it's coming out." And they've proven that they can do that, and they've done that before, right? Like I think Night Rain was something similar. So to me, this feels like as close as you can get to a lock without having a date. I think it will likely score pretty well. And again, probably in the second round, lower second round, but something that I would feel comfortable adding to my team and having a lot of confidence behind it, despite not having a release date.
Does the performance of Night Rain last year give you any pause? Because it Night Rain scored,
Yeah,
I think underperformed a lot of people's expectations in terms of Fantasy Critic, and certainly FromSoft games typically do. It's not terrible. I think it was an 80. I think we talked about it as
yeah,
an 80. But if you're if you're picking it for a lock, I'm assuming you're expecting it to do
do
better
better.
than 80.
I think so.
Yeah.
The thing, I part of it, I do wonder out loud with Night Rain, which I think was better received than maybe what the scores showed. I heard a lot of love for it in the Game of the Year shows for a number of different podcasts. I would suspect that maybe it's because the Elden Ring name is attached to
Mm.
it. This being a brand new IP, presumably, although many people have compared it to what Bloodborne looked like, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a little bit more wiggle room here. I'm not as concerned about the Night Rain stink because I think their track record is more than that. So
Yes.
that's kind
Okay.
of where I'm leaning, right? Especially with something like Armored Core 6. Like I think that just sticks out in my mind as this weird anomaly, but still scored well. And yeah, for me, that's
Okay.
I would feel comfortable having it on my team.
I think that's fair.
Now we're moving on to the high variance option, the boom or bust picks. Maybe I'll go first this time, Marcus, and lead us
Sure.
off with some of my picks here. And some of this is just gut feel. This is a harder one to define, right? That's why, the range here is quite large. And the first one, which is going to shock a lot of people, and people are probably wondering why we haven't talked about it yet, is Wolverine, right? Wolverine showed extremely well. This is maybe one of the games I am most hyped for in 2026, personally. But we don't have a date. I think all they said was fall. Now, I've heard some back and forth that they actually showed like the same day as GTA 6 as a potential release date, but I don't know if that was ever verified. But the point is, it has like a late or a fall 2026 time frame, I believe. And while the game is showing amazingly well, we haven't seen too much of it. I expect if it does come out, it will probably live up to some of that Spider-Man hype in terms of performance, in terms of fun, and just like that IP really carrying the day. But I do worry about the delay, the infamous delay, because if there is any truth to that November range, I would say very possible for it to be punted back. We were waiting a long time to see that trailer that came out in the fall, and it was a great trailer. But I just worry a little bit about it. I would still probably draft it in the first round. Like I'm not saying not to, but I think people do have to be wary that this is either going to get you a ton of points or it's going to get you zero.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more confident than you on Wolverine. So this would be, yeah, like firmly kind of in the top half of my first round, I think. I think that, this game has been in the oven for a while now. Like I feel like I don't like that we don't have a date and that I prefer it, if they were going to give us a window like fall, I'd prefer summer or,
Yeah,
spring or something like that. So that if it did happen to get pushed, we'd still probably be looking at this year. But, Insomniac hasn't released anything for
for a
now a
while.
while, right?
Hmm.
So I feel like it's kind of all hands on deck. We probably are going to get it. If we do have a delay, I think maybe it's just a month or a few weeks or something like this, just to kind of, so we'll see. But yeah, I think this one for me at least would be probably closer to a lock than a boomer
Interesting.
bust. But I get what you're saying.
It's one of those things, again, we kind of mentioned this. Like for me, if I picked it up, I don't think anybody's got the cojones to counter it. So
That's
you're
right.
probably going to be able to
Definitely not. Yeah,
move,
you're safe
and
there.
and I think you're probably going to have a little bit more wiggle room than some of the other ones we talked about. So you're probably fine. Like I said, I'm still probably taking it in the first round. Like I'm not crazy, but I do see a little bit of risk. I see a little risk here,
Yeah.
right? Like and like we talked about GTA. At least GTA has a date, right? It's not a date we
Yeah.
like, but at least
Yeah.
it's there on paper, right? They're
Yeah.
moving towards a
Yeah.
target,
It
whereas this is
it
still
it
open
at
ended.
least presents as having more confidence
Yeah.
in hitting something, right? Whereas kind of that those windows are giving the devs a little bit more wiggle room
Yeah,
to
it's
squeeze out
interesting
of.
too, just like so many developers. I don't know, maybe Sucker Punch doesn't work this way, but um, like the people were trying to get out of the way of GTA 6, right? People are trying to get out of the way of that. So if they know the GTA date, I feel like maybe we will know sooner rather than later whether or not it's going to actually land in the fall, right? Like I feel like
Right.
there should be something there. Anyway, do with that what you will. I think a lot of people are still going to take it in the first round. The second one up is Phantom Blade Zero. This one has actually got some hype behind it. Another Sony exclusive game, but we've talked about this a little bit. And I could see this. I think the range for this game is quite large. I think this actually does have a release date. So people that have it, I think it's getting a lot of value because people have like they're pretty confident it's going to release. But it isn't showing like I think we're still trying to figure out what this game is a little bit. And so the range is quite large. And that's why I'm treating this as a boom or bust. Not so much the delay factor, but just like where it could land. I can see this going anywhere from like a mid 70 to like a high 80. And you really don't know. Um, I know you haven't been super hot on this one. I don't know where you're thinking about it now. Has it changed? Has it shifted at all?
You filled out the show doc before me, and this I saw this. I was like, "Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, this is perfect.
This
This
was
is
yours?
exactly my definition of boom or bust." Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think I do see a huge range for this game, and I think like I could actually see as much as low 70s to high 80s, and for and it also has the potential of being delayed. Like
Yeah.
this is not that much different than Wolverine. It's kind of right in that same window, although it has a specific date at the moment. So like I don't know. I think that like this is the quintessential boomer bust for me. So I think you're bang on with this one.
Yeah. And it has a September 9th release date. Not horrible, right?
Nope.
Yeah. So, not the worst, but not, people are going to have to tread lightly. It's been, I think, getting
Yeah.
picked up quite early too. It's got a pretty significant, like,
Where it's being drafted, I would just let somebody else deal with that. Like
that's the thing.
that's not a
Yeah.
risk that I would be willing to take on at that point.
Yeah. I would rather have other things in the second and maybe even third round, right? And just let that drop. And it's probably going to be gone by the time it gets back to you, but that's okay. Um,
Hmm.
and then the last one for me was Gears of War E-Day. I actually really like Gears of War. I actually think this is coming out next year. Um, but I'm there's a lot of Xbox promises next year. I don't know if they're all going to come true. We talked about our confidence in Forza Horizon. This is one where I think it's not going to be dragged down the same way that the Gears remake that was released last year. I think it'll do better than that, likely. But like what there's a bit of a pattern here, right? Like I think there's a risk of delay. We don't have a date. There's a risk of other factors kind of entering the zeitgeist here that doesn't make it as solid a pickup as other games. And so that's just kind of what is driving me not to like prioritize it over other things. I think that's where my mind is at. So I still probably leaning more towards a boom here, but I think the potential for bust is still significant enough that I'm avoiding it a little bit, at least in my early thinking.
Yeah, no, I would agree with this one as well, John. I think like I don't know, there's, Xbox has this, with both Halo and Gears, people hold those franchises so precious that Xbox has to really deliver. Like they can't just be good. They've got to
Yeah,
be really great or else because if they're not, I think a good game that might not be Gears or Halo gets scored lower
yeah,
than it otherwise would if it didn't come with that baggage. So I do think that it has the potential to kind of have a bigger variance because of that. And that's assuming it comes out, which
yeah,
we're still, I think
And we're not saying
not
that's a
super
good
certain on.
thing, by the way, like, just for
Yeah.
the caveat, like, in terms
Y
of, like, how people are viewing this thing, it's just a pattern we've noted, right? Like, we're
yeah.
not saying it's fair, we're not saying it's justifiable, but it is out there, and so if you're looking at the game, like, you gotta take those things into consideration.
Yeah.
What about you, Marcus? Where's your head at when it comes to boomer busts?
Well, I could not have, another fantasy draft, having the potential at least to have a Silk Song potential boomer
Nice.
bust. I gotta put Silk Song DLC. I can't even remember what it's called. Silk Song DLC was just recently announced
Yes.
by Team Cherry, and this to me again is kind of like the quintessential boomer bust. I feel like this game it will score well if it comes out. We sat, waiting for years and years and years for Silk Song to come out. It eventually came out. I don't really have a ton of faith that this DLC is coming this year. If it does, it will score really well. It's probably not a risk that I'm willing to take at the point it's being drafted at. This DLC is being drafted. Where are we at here? Probably like second roundish. Oh, where is
Pretty
it? Actually, it's a
high.
little bit further down. It's
Yeah.
actually, yeah, it's a little bit further down. I would say probably for most leagues, kind of like third round. The other, I guess, consideration is that it's DLC.
Yeah.
We did a whole episode on how DLC uh, rarely scores quite as good as the base game. So, that's always a risk just being DLC. I don't think that's really a huge concern with Silksong DLC. I
Yeah.
think that original Hollow Knight DLC scored pretty good and was quite well received relative to the main game. This is really a, a selection here just based on I don't have any confidence that Team Cherry is going to deliver this game this year. So if it comes this year, it's probably going to score you points, probably good points. I'm not confident that's coming out. That's why I'm considering it a boomer bust.
I think you may have convinced me. And I'll
Uh,
tell you why. Because I had it decently high in my list. I think probably like, you know, in that kind of third round range. And a lot of that comes down to, the league rules again. Like I just came out of a league draft where we have to fill a DLC spot, right? So this is a decent option. But I, I think, yeah, I think you've convinced me. There's a couple things that make this a bit risky. One is that the game just came out. So if the DLC releases too soon after, there's always that question of like, well, why wasn't it part of the base game, right? Is this actually an expansion? What does it include? Maybe they've already released some information. I'm actually not super familiar with what's going to be in that expansion, but
I'm not 100. Maybe I shouldn't say it. I'm pretty certain that it's free DLC. I don't think for
yes,
people that have
that's
bought the game. Yeah.
that helps.
So
That helps
yeah.
the narrative. But the other thing though is you're right. The original DLC for Hollow Knight is what turned into Silksong, right? So because they couldn't stop working on it. So I think there is that risk there. I don't know if that's going to happen again, but um, yeah, without a date, I to be going through that again, maybe it's just not worth the headache more than
I don't want
anything,
the
right?
hassle. That
Yeah, I'm good passing. Yeah, that's a good one.
yeah.
Anyway,
My next boomer bust again is kind of like that quintessential boomer or bust in my opinion is unannounced mainline Half-Life game. So this is really
mm,
Half-Life 3. This has been rumored for a long time. I was actually quite surprised to see it uh, as I was, scrolling through my list. This is a game that has maybe 94, 95 potential if it were to come.
mm,
But it also I think is probably unlikely to come. So this is again almost the definition of boomer bust. Like if you happen to get it and it comes out, kudos to you, but probably not something that I'm willing to risk at least in the draft. If it happened, maybe it's something again depends a little bit on league rules and stuff and like how easy it is to drop games. How if you have any limitations on that.
yeah,
Maybe that's something that I might pick up and take a flyer on after the draft,
yeah.
but probably not something that I'm drafting because with drafting the draft, I want certainty, lower risk than something like unannounced Half-Life 3.
I think this is also one that people are more confident countering. I wouldn't be.
That's a good point.
That's not me.
Yeah.
I
It is
actually
though.
think it's.
That's a good point
I
though.
actually
Yeah.
think where there's smoke, there's fire, and I think this thing actually might be real and coming. Like I think I said that last year that I expected kind of to see it at the Game Awards, like the idea of it dropping when the Steam Machine comes out. If it's coming out in 2026, that's a whole other thing. Because if it is meant to be like a launch title, there's other issues at play there. But I think it's real. But I think also it's been so sought after and kind of in the rumor mill for so long that people are just more confident countering. So to your point, Marcus, it's probably going to get picked up in the draft, but I don't want to be the one holding it and it gets countered and you're just kind of hoping that it comes out and you're just playing that wishing game all year. And so, yeah, I'm kind of probably more negative here.
Like
Just,
this could be it could get you 0
yeah,
or it could get you like 30
30
points.
points. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it could literally be that
yeah,
range with this one.
yeah.
Yeah. And for my final boomer bust, might be a little controversial. Maybe I'll try it. I don't know if I have a really. This one's more of a gut feeling than anything else. I'm not really sure what to think of 007 First Light. So this is going quite high in leagues.
Hmm.
This is kind of like a first half of the first round
Oh, really?
pick, and
Really? That high?
at least according to Hype Factor, like
Okay,
this
I got
is
you.
the fifth most hyped game. It's got an early-ish date, so chances are it's coming out this year. May 27th is what the date is at the moment. But yeah, like it. I've heard mixed things about this game. Not sure that the narrative around this game is where I'd want it to be
Hmm.
in order to pick it as high as what it's going. It seems to be going. So um, there are definitely some people excited. I'm actually kind of interested to see what this does. But IO Interactive has, I would say, a good recent track record with Hitman 123 World of Assassination, that kind of franchise. But beyond that, it's a very mixed bag. So I don't I don't know how this James Bond game is going to
Um,
land, and I think that there is quite a wide range of possibilities. I think that this could be as low as low to mid 70s, as high as the high 80s. There's kind of that boomer bust, and like again, where it's being drafted, I think that there are much more safe picks with kind of like a lower variance, I guess.
yeah, I'll be honest. I have it at the probably, in a standard 10 or 12 person league towards the end of that list for the first round.
Okay.
So I was prepared to say I kind of disagree with you here, mostly based on the Hitman track record, but I do think there's still a lot of questions unanswered. And we saw a little bit more that got people a little bit more excited for it. It did look good. But
Yeah.
I guess this is probably like yeah, I guess of the ones I feel comfortable with in the first round, this is probably the most range. Like I'm not as confident in terms of its upper, ability to get kind of like the mid to high 80s. So yeah, I could
Yeah.
see it. I could see it. Boomer Bust, I
Yeah.
think, does define this one pretty well. That's pretty well, but it
Yeah.
does have a release date. I think it did get delayed for a couple months, so maybe some additional polish. So
Yeah, I thought it was March 1st. I was reading it here. I was like, "Oh, it's May." So
I
May
think it got pushed
27th
back
now.
just recently. There was an announcement in December
Yeah.
where it was like, oh, we need another
Okay.
2 months.
I must
So
have missed that. Yeah.
yeah, so that's good, maybe. That's some polish that's needed. But yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
that's a decent list. Before we go on to some of the other categories, do you want to talk about some of the other games that are maybe like the safe category, things that we haven't chatted about in some of these top echelon tiers that
Sure. I'm
maybe
just going to
people
pull
would,
up the list here.
yeah. I
There's a
mean,
couple here that really jumped out at me. One that I guess I can start with is I think a pretty safe pick, something that could go as early as first round, is Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, John.
hmm,
Assuming that it's eligible in your league, it's got I guess there's a new reimagined tag in your in Fantasy Critic, but it's probably falling in that remake remaster category as well, I
yeah.
think. Dragon Quest has been scoring really well of late. The Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, I think, was at 85, and the 1-2 remake as well, which came out just in October, was right around the same, right, John? I think you had
I
it
think
on one
so.
roster, around
Yeah.
85 as
Yep.
well.
Yep. Yeah, so these remakes are doing it's a slightly different art style, but people seem to really like the quality of life improvements. So I tend to
Yeah,
agree. It makes them more accessible, and people kind of like the idea of these big RPGs and just being like more they can
and it's
actually play
February
them.
5th. You know, it's
Yeah,
coming out soon. It's got a
yeah.
date. You
Got
know,
the date, relatively safe. Yeah.
yep.
For me, a couple that were on my list that, I mean, Pragmata probably could have been another boomer bust, likely, but reading what I've read and looking into a little bit more with having the date and everything else, I've been feeling better and better about Pragmata. Capcom game,
Capcom
interesting,
is a
doing
big
something.
factor here for
Yeah,
me, actually,
right.
because Capcom doesn't miss
That's the
much,
thing.
especially lately, right?
So this could just be like a new thing that they've done. There's some combat and puzzle pieces. I'm feeling better and better about that game the more I look at it. So I could be wrong. Probably maybe more boomer busty. And then the other one for me is Neo 3. Another kind of safe pickup. The Neo franchise has been doing pretty well. It's been scoring well in terms of like low mid 80s. This one has a February 6th release date. Neo 3 is going pretty high. I feel good if I have that on my team. Even if I'm not interested in playing the game, it's it's gonna be comfortably there.
I'll just say one more, I guess, is I think that I would be quite comfortable having this on my team. I don't know how far it slid. I'd be curious to know maybe from the draft that you did.
Mhm.
Persona 4 Revival. Persona games, they score well. These recent releases that they've done have done quite well. And I don't know, I feel like right now it's dated in Fantasy Critic as April 2026 or later. So
Yeah,
it's pretty vague, but there was some talk that it may be coming out last year, and I think we had talked about it in our kind of rumored unannounced games and ranking those, and we had potentially there had been some kind of breadcrumbs that it was coming soon. So I'd be curious, where did this, do you recall
oh
where
my
this kind of
god.
landed, or what?
Yeah, you're blowing my mind with this right now. It went relatively early. I think it was second or third round. There was not a lot of confidence that this was going to actually drop this year. But then
Okay.
as you're talking, I'm looking up any news, and I didn't realize that some news just dropped today. That apparently Alice has been teasing more news about it coming out in the new year. Uh,
Okay.
so I don't know where that April date came from, but now I was not confident about this game. I'm shocked that you're talking about it as a safe pickup. Now I think I need to like go back and add it to my list. 'Cause definitely there's things moving here. I'm more confident about it now.
I mean,
Yeah,
Persona 4 is beloved. Persona 4 Golden on the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation community. This is a beloved game. Many people's favorite Persona. I feel like this could, if it comes out, this could be like in the high 80s, low 90s. Like
yeah.
I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation for it. So
Wow. Another. I don't know if I would call this like this is the last one because now we're getting out of the safe territory, maybe with this last one here. But Reanimal has a
mhm.
date. Safe, depends on how many points you're trying to score here. Um, I think it has a relatively safe floor. I don't know what the ceiling is, right? But Reanimal has a date. Same developers as Little Nightmares. Interesting new franchise. We'll see. I guess there's some risk there, just because it's their kind of first outing on their own. But you know,
People are excited about this game.
yeah,
It feels
yeah.
like.
Like I would be comfortable. I have it like greenlit, you know, if I could get it. So anyway, yeah, there's some good options out there, people. There's some good options out there. Okay, let's talk about sleepers real quick. Although I think one of the things that we've been chatting about is there's not as many sleepers this year as other years potentially. So do you want to kick us off?
First one is probably the least sleeper of the three that I'm going to mention today, at least in terms of ownership. So this game is called Big Walk. I don't think the average, maybe I'm underselling what the average gamer is aware of, but this is not like a high profile title. It is from the developers of Untitled Goose Game. It is, I guess, another one of those friend slop games, John, which kind of the term that kind of came in. I watched a trailer again this morning as I was preparing. I was like, I think that this game has the potential to do quite well. It's owned in about 31% of leagues so far. So it's not flying completely under the radar, but it's something you could probably target towards the end of your draft. And I think it has the potential to do quite well. Untitled Goose Game actually scored lower than I thought it did because that
Yeah, I
game is
thought it
thought
was
of
good.
quite
Yeah,
highly. It's sitting at an 80, but I think that 80 for Big Walk is probably about its floor. The ceiling might not be exceptionally higher than that. You might be kind of looking at that 80 to 85 range, but I think that's probably what you're looking at for Big Walk. And if you can get an 80 to 85 with a fourth round pick, I think that you make that pick.
yeah.
So Big Walk is one of my first sleeper.
Yeah, in terms of ownership, I mean, we're only at the end of December here, so while we're recording this, so I don't know how many drafts are already completed. The numbers might be a little skewed, but I mean, I think that's pretty high actually. It wasn't on my radar. Outside of having seen it in some really highly anticipated indie game lists. That's I kind of had flagged it there, but we should do an episode on front slot games because I think there's
Frenslov, yeah.
the problem is like a lot of them release in early access or in a beta.
Yeah.
That is a big challenge when it comes to Fantasy Critic. But anyway, yeah. What's up next?
Next is a little bit of personal bias might be creeping in here, John, because this game is a game coming out from, I think, possibly my favorite indie developer. And this game is called Blighted. The indie developer is Drinkbox Studios out of Toronto. And, Drinkbox doesn't miss. Their most recent game was Nobody Saves the World, scored kind of on the low end. I think, frankly, I really love Nobody Saves the World. It's sitting at an 80, but their previous was Guacamelee 2, which was an 86, Severed, which is an 84. Guacamelee before that, I don't have the number in front of me, but in the 80s for sure. They don't miss. Blighted kind of looks, to look at it, it looks a little like Hades. It's kind of that isometric top-down action RPG, not a roguelite. And it's only owned in 5.4% of leagues. It's been a few years now since Nobody Saves the World. I think it came out in 2023. So, it's enough time. They've said 2026 is the release date. We don't have anything beyond that, just 2026. But I do think that there's a pretty solid chance it's coming out this year. And um, this is something that I'll be targeting, whether in drafts or potentially kind of as a pickup after draft to add to my team because I think that if it comes out, this is going to score. Get your points. It's going to score well.
They get taken in the draft I'm in. I think it was supposed to potentially come out in 2025, so pretty confident that
Hmm.
the slippage in 2026 give it some confidence. So yeah, absolutely a good sleeper um, to target if it's available.
Yeah. And number three is not a small game by any means, but it seems to have fallen off the radar of fantasy critic players. It's only owned in 4.8% of leagues at the moment. And this is one that I was quite high on
Hmm.
last year, John. Unannounced God of War Greek game. So this is that 2.5, the rumored 2.5D God of War game. God of War games score really well. Obviously, this is not going to be in the same style as kind of all the mainline God of War games, but I think that again 4.8%. I was frankly shocked to see it have such low ownership, John. I think just people have just forgotten about it, and it was strongly rumored, and I think it kind of quite late got pushed out of 2025. So I think the likelihood that it gets announced and comes out in the first half of this year, I think is pretty decent. Jeff Grubb was the one who had first announced this. He's, you know, has a pretty good track record for kind of making these types of announcements and having, good contacts. And I think this game is coming. If it comes, it's going to score well.
Yeah.
So I think that this is an easy one to draft it, to target in your late rounds and get your points. You may not even be drafted, which is kind of crazy given kind of how the flurry around it getting picked up middle of last year when it first started getting rumored.
Yeah, this is one like I would normally if I had more drops available, I'd probably be going after it. But it's one of those things. Your league rules, this everybody. This is going to affect how like what
Yes.
you pick up off the waiver wire, or even what you draft potentially. So yeah, no, those are good three. Better than mine, I would say. And I think part of the reason is we've been talking about this. This is I think it's a tougher year in terms of there's less release dates. And so, we try to really target things that we have a lot of high confidence in. Um, but I think a lot of people are getting pretty savvy, are targeting these things. So with these first few, it might just be more about moving them up the list rather than true sleepers that are not on people's radars. Mixtape is the first one. So I think a lot of people have already heard about Mixtape. I think it's already drafted in 38 or 39% of leagues, and we're only in December. So it's on people's radars. I think it probably should be a little higher, truthfully. It's one of those games that I think showed really well. We heard Kyle Stevenson talk about it at Summer Games Fest. Um, I think it was supposed to drop at the time. He had thought for sure it was coming in 2025, if you recall that episode. So in terms of its release, I'm very confident it's going to drop in 2026. So it's one of those things
I
that,
think so, yeah.
compared to some of the other things around which it's being drafted, like I think people should have probably higher confidence in this game. um I don't know, any thoughts on Mixtape? I think we're probably.
No, I think you're right. I'm personally pretty excited about this game. I think it looks really good. Again, the developers of Artful Escape, right?
Mhm. I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which reviewed low 80s.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what you're looking at with the potential for maybe a few points higher.
Yeah, probably in
So
the
yeah.
yeah, probably in the same range as this next game, which is The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium
Mm,
Tales. I don't remember what it's called. Square Enix game that was showed at a Nintendo Direct, I think, last year. Action RPG. Still, it's on people's radars. I think it's like 26 or 27% published so far, so people are definitely aware of it. I think this is definitely has the potential to do fairly well, like kind of some of those other, probably low 80s is kind of what I was thinking um, for this title, but it feels like it's coming. It looked pretty done when they first showed it. Square, releases these kind of um, good looking RPGs, and they're pretty solid. So again, not really a sleeper by the traditional definition, but one that maybe can move up slightly in comparison to other games that people might have showing higher on their lists. That's how I'm treating it anyway. And the last one, it's funny, we're both the same thing on the third one here, because I had this drafted last year and it's only drafted in 4% of leagues, and that's Shovel Knight, the Shovel Knight remake or re-release, basically the director's. I don't know if it's being treated as a director's cut. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Yes, it is a director's cut. So if that's available in your league, I mean that is one of those settings, but it is a sneaky pickup. It was supposed to release in 2025. They're kind of the devs were pointing to 2025. Obviously, we've now slipped. The only thing that I think people need to be cautious with is it's the same developer as Mina the Hollower. So, in terms of release schedules, that it might be a little bit of a concern, but hopefully they can both land. And if that game gets reviewed, which I think it probably will, from what I did a lot of research on it last year. Um, yeah, I'm just running it back similar similar to you, Marcus. If it comes out, I think it's a sneaky pickup that a lot of people are overlooking. Has a 0% counter pick rate so far, and I think that's just because people are afraid of it, right? So that's something to be mindful of as well. I like when they have a 0% counter pick because then that gives you kind of maximum flexibility. So
yeah, no, I think that's a good one. Shovel Knight is beloved. I think I maybe it's just me. I love Shovel Knight. I'm ready for Mina though. I'm ready
yeah,
for Mina. We had a
yeah.
lot of Shovel Knight lately, so
All
yeah.
right, last category here, and that is the avoids, the dreaded avoids, which will probably cause a lot of anger amongst our listeners, but let's do it anyway. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe I'll kick us off. Um, okay, so I'm gonna try and put some context around some of these, but the first one I have here is Crimson Desert. This is a game that I counterpicked last year. It didn't come out. Most certainly coming out this year. So with the release date, I don't want to put people. When I say avoid, I mean it's one of those things where it's already almost 70% published. I think it's like 25% counterpicked. I think the average draft, for what that's worth, the average draft position has it at around 19th overall. I think that's pretty high for this game. I think it's showing pretty well. But if you look at the original game in the series, it didn't. Didn't score very highly. This is supposed to be kind of like a brand new entry, but from everything I've read, I've heard their gambit here. People have signaled that it could be as complex as like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 kind of mechanics. But everything I read from people playing it at Summer Games Fest was that it was extremely finicky and complex in terms of gameplay. So I know, Marcus, we've talked about how difficulty might affect the score, but this wasn't like a glowing review is the way I'm
Right.
looking at it. From I tried to read as much as I could. Obviously I had a counter pick, so I was like keenly aware of what people were saying about this game in the event that it did release last year. And so I don't know, when I say avoid, like I know there's a temptation here. It's actually pretty high, I would say. Like I would say it's not worth it in those early rounds because it's just I think there's just too much baggage on it that there's too much risk involved, and that's why personally I'm avoiding it.
I agree. We're the Crimson Desert haters. So like I don't see it personally. There's lots of games that scored well last year that I also didn't see, so take
Mm,
that for what it's worth. But like for me, yeah, I again 19th overall seems kind of crazy to me. That is probably mid second round for most leagues, somewhere in that neighborhood, early to mid second round. Yeah, no way. So yeah, I would be avoiding this. This might be a boomer, but you could maybe call this a boomer
yeah,
bust, but I'm probably going to say it's in an avoid. I'd probably lean to the avoid as well.
like I don't think the ceiling here is at the Kingdom Come Deliverance
Right.
2 level, right? Like I'm not thinking that. Now, watch a year from now we'll come back and be like, well, that was a mistake. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm feeling fine avoiding this one. The next one up for me was Blood of the Dawnwalker. Again, this one is 42% published, 21% counterpicked so far. I just don't know if it's coming out. And I just don't think there's enough
Mm,
there to make me interested to take a risk on this. And that's
right.
partly like I think there's a lot of like hype around it, but without the release date and without any sort of like hard commitment of a release date, I'm okay not going after this.
It doesn't seem like we know enough about this game for you to be confident that's coming this year. Like
Yeah.
even if it has a 2026 date, it's not just a TBA, right?
It's
It's
just
dated 2026.
2026. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
still, like I mean, it's we haven't seen that much from it. The trailers we've seen, I'm like, okay, you've got my interest, but I definitely need to see more. And yeah, again, if this is being drafted in nearly of leagues, like
Almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I'm not the one that's going to be drafting this game.
I think there's a lot of hype. The Rebel Wolves developer, this new studio with a lot of former CD Projekt Red developers, and I think
That's
that's
right. Yep.
driving a lot of the
Yep.
excitement. Which, listen, it's probably worthwhile excitement. It's just first studio, like I think it's their first project. I just don't think there's enough there to push me to want to do this. We saw this with what was it? Was it God? What was the name of that game from last year with the GTA dev? Um,
Oh, Mind's Eye.
Mind's Eye, right? Where
Yeah.
the hype got
How could
because
we
is
forget?
now that was a bit of a
Yeah.
that was a different beast, but I just it's an avoid for me.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think this game's well. I mean, there's not too many games that score a 39 or whatever Mind's Eye did, but
yeah, yeah. And the last one on my list is Fable, which I think is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And watch, I'm sure that it'll drop in some league, and I'll end up picking it up. But I'm really trying to avoid it for two reasons. One, of all the games that Xbox is purporting to come out in 2026, this is the one that I have the least confidence in. So, it could be a stacked lineup. It could be the greatest Xbox year ever. Um, but I don't. This is the one that like I don't know. I just don't know. And so I'd
mhm,
rather avoid. The other part is like as I was reading through, because I really wanted to understand where it should fit on my list, my ranking, as I prepped for this first draft, and like lots of discourse around like development problems and just
mm,
like not a lot of unity in terms of like just like problems, just not a good narrative. Um, and so that just doesn't give me as much like, well, is it really worth the risk to end up with something that may not even live up to the expectations of it? Like, I feel like it also has its own weight, like its own title creates a weight on its own shoulders of living up to expectations. And so I'm like, I've crossed it out now. I've
Yeah.
got it on my avoid
So if this
pile.
fell to you, if this fell to you in, I don't know, let's say late third round, early fourth round,
Well, let me say,
you're
like late
passing.
third, fourth round, is there not something else that you could find that is going to give you more guaranteed comfort? Because I'm pretty sure I
Yeah.
found it, right? In terms
Yeah.
of, so I'm just like, I think that's the balance, right? Like, it may come out, it might get like an 89 or a high 80, and you feel really great about it. I just think the angst and anxiety that's going to go into that is just too high. I didn't
Mm.
check its counter pick rate. That would be an interesting stat to see
See, because
where people are.
I have more confidence. I think I can safely say I have more confidence in Fable than you do. Right now, it's sitting. What is the counter pick? Percent counter pick
Wow.
47.6. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah,
Holy cow!
it's a pretty
Yeah.
high. That's what I mean. Like people don't have now. Maybe that's permeated my thinking on it, right? Where the people's like confidence levels are just low. I
Yeah.
could be wrong, right?
I mean, its average draft position. So I wouldn't probably be drafting it. Its average draft position is 16. So that's kind
Pretty
of
high.
probably early second round
Yeah,
for most leagues. That I don't know that I'm drafting Fable quite that early, but if it third round, I probably would be more
give it a go.
inclined.
I guess it
Yeah, my
depends what
third
else is
pick.
available,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It does depend on what's available, what the rules are in your league. That counter pick number scares the crap out of me because it means if you do pick it up, you're probably going to get it locked in and you're going to live with it. And maybe you're fine
yeah.
riding the season with that, but I'd rather be free of that headache. And then if it does get bumped, you can make a move. So Marcus, after that, like where's your avoids? Where are you thinking?
So I got three. Mine aren't quite. I don't think it will be quite as. They're not as high profile as yours. Although maybe the first
I
one
mean,
is.
the first
So
one is
uh, Tomb Raider: Legacy of Atlantis. It is 64.4% owned, or at least was at the time that I looked this up. My worry with I've said this, on previous episodes. I do worry a little bit that the age of some of these original games that are being remade, they show their age basically. Even though they're being remade, I just wonder how some of you're not probably like completely redoing everything to the point where you're basically creating an entirely new game. So um I don't know. I think that I'm just happy to let this one go, and I was actually quite surprised to see it being drafted quite as early as it was. I think people maybe are hungry for some Tomb Raider. Um, I am much more confident in the new game that they also announced at the same time, which is supposedly coming next year. That would be one that I would put on my radar. Tomb Raider: Legacy of Atlantis. Happy to just completely avoid that one.
I'm a little higher on it than you. Like, I don't think I'm
Okay.
avoiding it, but it definitely would have to drop to like a later round. I'm looking
Yeah.
at it. It's
Because
saying average draft position around 24, 23.9, 24. You know, third, fourth
yeah,
round. I'd probably be okay
yeah.
with it, but again, it kind of
23, 24 is like the end of the second round
for you
for
or for
most
most of
like,
your leagues.
well, a
Yeah,
12 person league. Yeah.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
12. Yeah, that's so maybe that's still a little high. I have it
Yeah.
lower down on my list, but I would still get it. I'd chance it.
Okay.
I feel like it's
Not a
coming out this
complete
year.
avoid for you.
Yeah, I feel like it's
Okay.
coming out this year because it looks like they have a
Yes. Yeah.
sequencing plan in action here.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, all three of mine are actually fairly, they're coming out this year. Second one though is Mario Tennis Fever, just over 26% owned. Mario has, this aura around it. Uh, but don't let, that fool you in this case, because Mario sports games do not score well. Mario Tennis Aces from a few years ago, 75. And the other games, what was it? Mario, there was a Mario golf game, there was John, you probably know the titles. There was a soccer
the
game as well.
soccer brawlers. Yeah,
They don't score very well. I'm happy to completely just,
Sorry,
let
strikers, not
somebody else deal
brawlers.
with this. I'm not touching it. Strikers, that's what it
Strikers, not
was. Yeah.
brawlers. Brawlers is a different game
Yeah.
that I wish they would
You're
make.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mario Tennis Fever. I think it's got an early-ish date, right? February coming out this year?
Is it
Is it
dated?
February?
Yes, sorry, you're right. February 12th. It is pretty early. It does have an early date.
S
That's right.
An early date. Okay, yeah. So February 12th. Yeah, yeah. Let this one go. Let somebody else deal with the headache of Mario. The this one's not getting the Nintendo bump,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I
Um,
agree with you on this. People will be tempted because I will say that this looked like it had more to it than past Mario sports games. So I think there might be, you heard me get very excited about it. But yeah, I don't think, you can't take it. You can't take that risk. I just wouldn't.
and so the third game that I have is Invincible Versus. I am avoiding this one like the plague. Like I don't think that this has a very good narrative around it. I don't think it showed very well at the Game Awards. People did not seem to be particularly excited. Um, it's only 2012. Sorry, it's only 12.6% owned. So not a lot of people seem to have a ton of faith in it, but there are probably much better options kind of in that later rounds of the draft that you can take a flyer on than Invincible Versus. People don't seem excited about, I don't know, the cast. I was reading a little bit about it. Like people are frustrated with the move set of the characters. Um, I'm a big Invincible fan. When I first saw, this first trailer, I think it was at Summer Games Fest of last year. I was like, an Invincible game. That's what and I was like, oh, just deflated that it was a fighting game. Like I think that people that are fans of Invincible probably were largely feeling similar to me. It's like we wanted an actual third person, action adventure kind of superhero game, and a fighting game was not what we wanted out of Invincible. And I don't think that this game is going to
Yeah.
do what is hoped. So yeah, just let this one go.
An interesting fact is that Tulkon Fighting series is also coming out this year, which is the game that
Yeah,
many people are
that's the one
much
you want.
more
If you want a
at the
fighting game,
one,
that's the one you want.
right?
Yeah,
And that's going pretty high for good
yeah,
reason. I think that one has a lot more potential. So I agree with you 100% on this one as well. I don't like the look of it. I'm not even an Invincible fan.
yeah. I know
I
that's
just
what
don't
some
like the
people have
look of it.
complained about
So
as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Marcus? What are your thoughts on this preview this season so far?
Well, I gotta say, John, I thought that their things were more thin than they actually are. There
Yeah.
actually is enough here. Like I was really worried, and maybe I haven't done a draft yet. I know that you said things got really thin by the end, but I feel like having done the prep that I have and kind of where we're at now, I feel like I'm going to be able to be quite confident in filling out kind of the bottom end of my draft and probably have some good games to target in that post draft
Yeah.
pickup. I'm feeling better now than I did even maybe at the start of our conversation, like just kind of going through the list, talking some of this stuff through. Um, there's more here, I think, than I originally gave the season credit for. Like it really felt like there was just not a heck of a lot on tap, and I feel like there's more than I originally thought.
I'm with the exception of maybe like a top 10, top 15, I'm finding it more challenging than past seasons. Specifically
Okay.
last year, where we were really trying to break things down, I recall just in terms of release dates alone and picking
Mm,
from games that it just feels like it's thinner, especially with release dates. And that makes it a little bit more challenging to place value in the right places. Like we're assuming a lot. So, and the other thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if your cat this even just the idea of picking a sleeper. There's a few things on my list I didn't want to mention yet because I think it's too early to. But also, people are just way more locked in on those games that are expected to be kind of the breakout. Like one of the ones that we didn't talk about was Karen. Karen was pretty
yep.
high in the Fantasy Critic Discord last year for most of the year. Obviously got bumped into 2026, but now through the draft season, it's very much on people's radars. It's not a sleeper. So there's just and that's just one example. There's tons of other ones where people are just way more um locked in on kind of where they need to be putting their effort and their attention, and that's making it more challenging, I think, at least in the initial rounds. So we'll see if that plays out over time. But that's just been an observation going so far.
Okay.
That's been an assumption of mine for a little while now. So we'll see if it continues. Well, that's going to do up our topic of the month, our 2026 preview. Hopefully that's helpful to you. And we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep this hype train going as we continue with our hype check and see what else is coming out, where people are putting their waiver wire dollars, and what we can expect in the coming month.
Hype check.
All right. So obviously, there's a lot of overlap between the draft, Marcus, and then also those first few weeks of waiver wire pickups. There's usually a lot of movement. I know I like to try and get something in early, to try and round out and just solidify with things that I'm more confident in. I will be honest, just like I was just saying, I'm I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot that I'm willing to put money down because the league that I'm in, that I just drafted for, we have limited drops, and I got to make sure that I'm putting those things towards something. And it's not a whole lot of release dates for things that are still sitting out there. So um, we can talk about essentially where the waiver wire has been moving, at least up until this point at the end of December. Did you want to start off with anything specific?
No, how about we kind of just quickly run down all of these? We've spoken already about almost all of them as
Yeah,
I'm looking at the list on this kind of the top 10 or so
yeah.
of these games that are being picked up.
Maybe we'll stop on the ones that we didn't chat about yet. So, the first one up here is Vampire Crawlers. Obviously, a variation on the Vampire series. This one, I believe, does not have a release date, but people are putting bids on it. There are
It
already
has a window, I
it.
believe. Let me just confirm.
Yeah,
Does it
28
have a
bids
window?
and over $200 fantasy dollars already spent on Vampire Crawlers.
Yeah, it says early to mid 2026.
Okay, so people are putting some stock in that. Um,
Yeah.
this is actually one that's on my list. I'm comfortable picking this up even in the draft if it came to that in the lower rounds. How are you feeling about Vampire Crawlers?
Yeah, I mean, Vampire Survivors is like a phenomenon, right? And
Yeah,
this is, they've been adding DLC for what feels like forever. So for them to come out with a new game, I think that this is poised to probably do well.
pretty well.
People are primed to really love anything that is Vampire Survivor adjacent or sequel or
Hmm.
whatever it is. So I am excited to see what these guys do next, and I think that it could score quite well. So I don't. It shocks me. It surprises me a little bit that it's the top pickup because there are some pretty high profile games below it. But maybe it just happened to be available in a few more
In a
leagues
few more
than
leagues.
some of the.
I think that's what's happening here because some of these are surprising. We have next up the Hollow Knight Silk Song DLC, which we've already spoken about.
Yeah,
um, Mixtape coming up next, and then Cairn, which we also just referenced. Marcus, unfortunately, let many people still targeting Tomb Raider Legacy Atlantis, so people are
yeah,
still
yeah.
feeling pretty good about it. And then one of mine, Gears of War E-Day, still kind of rounding it out. I suspect with those two specifically, those are post-draft pickups to kind of do what we were just mentioning, which is avoid the counter pick. For those leagues that just have the single
Could be.
counter pick, I
Yeah,
think that might
could
be one
be.
of the things. Yeah. A game that we have not talked about, but we should, especially for that DLC slot, is the next game on this list, which is Cult of the Lamb Woolhaven. This one, I would say, middle of the draft that I was in, and I think it's getting a lot of traction on the Fantasy Critic, like in terms of publishing. You've been pretty high on this one for a while, Marcus. Is this something that you'd be willing to draft?
Willing to draft again. Like I go back and forth about this again. And we're talking DLC. DLC was one of the big kind of lessons learned the last fantasy season for us. Is that I think that in terms of DLC, Cult of the Lamb DLC, Hollow Knight or Silk Song DLC, those are kind of your premium DLCs and
Yeah,
probably pretty unlikely to kind of score low.
yeah,
So yeah, I probably would draft it,
yeah.
despite kind of the evidence, I don't know, middle of the draft. Kind so what
Well,
you're talking
again,
about, say
the
early third
league,
round?
yeah, the league that I'm in, we had to fill a DLC slot. So there's like that added
Oh, okay.
value of, it's kind
Yes.
of like fantasy football where you're trying to lock something
Yeah.
in a position and get high in that position if you're going to have to fill it, right? Um, I agree with you. There's a couple other DLC that are floating out there that might be worth mentioning. If you do have to fill a slot, there's the Diablo 4 DLC that's set to come
Right.
out early. One of the games that I was looking at was also World of Warcraft has their next DLC slated for the first half of the year. I think there's actually a date beside it. That might be one, although maybe slightly more risky than those previous three. And then an interesting one is maybe not as secure as these other others is Little Gator Game has
Yeah.
Alone in the
I
Dark
was wondering if
DLC.
you were going to say that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So another one, kind of like if you have to fill a slot, those are the ones that I feel better about, versus waiting and seeing what else might, come to fruition over the next little while. But yeah, yeah. And I think Little Gator Game and World of Warcraft and Diablo all have dates beside them, and so
Right.
that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, keeping it going here, then we have the unannounced mainline Half-Life game. People are feeling pretty good about that. Again, probably
Well,
trying to
again,
avoid that counter.
this is the point to potentially get it is to add it post draft, assuming you have the ability to, or you don't have too many limits on the amount of drops that you can make, because
Yeah,
this is probably you're probably unlikely to have it counterpicked and be stuck with it.
yeah,
Um, and this is where I like to kind of take my big swings, is picking things up after the draft. Again, assuming that I can fairly easily drop something if I, you know, get information that says it's not coming, or get a
yeah,
little scared. I want to fill something else out,
yeah.
put something else in its spot. But this is the spot to kind of take it.
The next game kind of fits that same bill, which is Persona 4 Revival. So again, whether it's
Right.
the news that's moving people or it's the same idea in terms of
Just that
strategy.
potential.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so those are the ones that we kind of want to get out of the way. The next set are actually things that we've not talked about yet, but I think actually should be spoken about, whether it's with the draft or with the waiver wire. So there's a series of games here. Ontos, um, not a lot of bids, just 18, but people are paying attention to this game. This did get drafted in my league. Has a lot of hype behind it, but I don't believe it has a date. So it's still one of those things, but looks interesting. I think this is, let me just confirm. I believe this is the, yes, creators of Soma, the spiritual successor of
Oh
Soma.
yes, yes, yes. I
Yes.
was trying to think
Um,
of what game this was. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. So people are going for it. Again, no date, and I think that's maybe why you see it more on waiver wires and being drafted, but definitely something to consider. Any thoughts on Ontos? I mean, it's on my list. I feel a little uneasy about it because I'm not sure about it and I don't have the date. But like, if I was slim pickings at the end, it'd probably be something I'd be comfortable with. Waiver wire seems probably safer. I don't know, Marcus. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have strong thoughts. I'd have to look into it a little bit more. Like I said, I kind of had forgotten which game this was. So
Yeah,
when you said the Soma devs, that's not a bad thing.
yeah,
Soma's a very kind of uh, well loved game, well loved horror game from a few years back. But the one that's actually more on my radar is the next one that we're going to mention, which is
yes,
Memories of Orbit. This is one that I've had on my radar, I think, since Summer Games Fest. I think that's when it was first revealed. They released a demo at least shortly after that, and I had played it. I think this has the potential. It's a 2D Metroidvania, kind of a cell shaded art style, kind of some feel to Ori, I'd say, like the
hmm
Ori games. And I think this one could certainly be one. I'm not sure I'm drafting it. It's got a nice early release date. Like this is coming
I'm
in just a
drafting it.
few weeks here.
I have this pretty high
Yeah.
on my list. Like
Yeah.
top, yeah, like fourth round, third, fourth round type of
Oh,
pickup.
okay.
Yeah,
It
January
looks
20th.
good, man. And it played from what I played of the demo, it feels good.
Yeah,
So
and people are talking really highly about it. January 20th is the date on this
yep.
one, so I actually think this is a decent pickup. Waiver wire, even better. Yeah. The other one, the next one up, replaced. It's back and actually has a
Yep.
release date now. I'm
Yep.
not as low on this as other people, especially now that the release date is there. I think it's still, despite all of the history on it, I still think it could actually do pretty well. It looks like a cool ass game. Any thoughts on
Yeah.
replaced?
Well, I feel like this one fits kind of in the boom or bust category for me. I feel
Oh
like
yeah,
there's quite a wide range of outcomes possible for it. I'm hoping that it does well. I thought it looked cool from the very beginning, but kind of everything around the game has not been good at all. There's been, a couple of pretty significant delays, if I'm not mistaken. I think that it was previewed, I want to say probably about a year and a half ago at this point, and at least from the coverage that I had seen, it wasn't all that well received at that point.
Yeah.
Probably explains some of the this extended delays that we've had. So hopefully they've got it and patched it, but I don't have a lot of confidence to have this one on my team.
Yeah.
I do like that it has a date, kind of an early date though,
Yeah.
but probably let somebody else deal with that one.
Yeah, we normally would cut it here and like move off from like because the number of bids and dollar values gets really thin here. But I think we should keep going because there's a couple more games here that are I think worth talking about that didn't really fit in nicely into one of our categories, but I think it's worth it. Orbitals is a Nintendo Switch 2, I think exclusive that does like the co-op screen, and it's pretty high on people's lists. No date, just 2026. I don't think I would necessarily draft it, but I can see why. Again, people are kind of going for it on the waiver wire. Um, the other one I wanted to quickly flag was Ace Combat 8, uh, Wings of Thief. I see it being picked up on the waiver wire. I understand that also. This is getting drafted pretty high. I think this is like up there. I don't understand it. I don't think it has a release date. Um, I'm not sure what's driving it outside of maybe people just excited for it. Any thoughts on Ace Combat 8?
Our friend Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog, we've talked about the Tales from the Backlog League. He loves these games. He's new to them, but I've heard him talking about these games, and I think they've got a surprisingly deep kind of narrative associated with them. Beyond that, I don't know anybody that's played these games, so I don't really know much about it, and I haven't really looked that much into them. So I think it's like Ace Combat is a game for Ace Combat fans, and I don't
Yeah,
know that it's particularly welcoming to new people because I feel like it's almost like the Trails games
yeah.
in that sense.
I think if it had a date, I might look into it a little bit closer, but at this point, I'm just kind of avoiding it. I'm not trying to walk into that.
Yeah,
Any other games on this list that kind of strike your fancy,
not
Marcus?
really. There's nothing. Let me just scroll down a little bit more. No, I think we've hit on all of the ones that I have
Yeah. Yeah,
interest in.
the only other one I was gonna kind of flag, which I thought about talking about as a bit of a sleeper, was Enter the Gungeon 2. I think Enter the Gungeon, the original game, I think was in the low 80s. This one,
Mhm.
people seem pretty confident. I think it may have slipped into 2026. I feel pretty confident that this is coming out this year. Um, so we'll see. It's something I'm keeping my eye on as a potential indie to target, that has like kind of that safe floor. The one that I'm surprised is not here, and maybe just because it's going in all the drafts that it's in, is Monster Hunter Stories 3. That was one that was
Oh
relatively
yeah,
high on my list, but I guess it's just getting drafted, and so people aren't,
must be.
you know.
Yeah, must be.
But it's a good list. I mean, it's a good place to consult, but be mindful of just because people are drafting it doesn't mean it's a guarantee. You might want to, really research these items before you kind of add them to your team. And then very quickly, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the top counter picks so far. So outside of the draft, there's many leagues that people have to add counter picks. Um,
Like
it-
post draft.
yeah, post draft, exactly.
Yep.
And
Yep.
most times people like to wait a little bit to really see what they pick up off the waiver wire. But there's been a few that have kind of gone in for it. And I thought there were interesting ones. The first one up, only four, so it's not a huge sample size here, but Grand Theft Auto 6. A lot of
Yep.
people just believing that it's, not going to happen or it's going to be pushed out. So just that's an interesting one to top that weird leaderboard. Next one I think makes more sense. Star Wars Galactic Racer. This did get drafted and then promptly counterpicked, and I think that's why it's
Okay.
so people are drafting it. But I think my guess is that it's being counterpicked immediately. And then the last one, Fable. Just kind of flag that one out there.
It's consistent with the counter pick rate that we saw
Yeah,
a little earlier, right?
yeah. So any other thoughts on the initial waiver wire leading into 2026?
I'm just kind of curious to see how this ends up playing out. I'll be like, these waiver wire pickups are updated on the Fantasy Critic website every week, like on a weekly basis, and
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if what we're seeing, because these are people that are drafting relatively early. This is
Hmm.
probably like that between the game awards and the
New
end of
Year's.
December.
Hmm.
That's I don't know that I've ever played in a league that's drafted quite that early. So most of the drafts that I play in, and I think the majority of the drafts on the site probably happen in early January. And so, is the trends that we're seeing and kind of the pickups, are they going to hold kind of like a few weeks later?
Yeah.
So that'll be something I'll be watching out for.
Yeah, lots of news still to come in early January. Marcus, last year I was super confident, and we were way wrong on those.
Yes,
I
especially
expected,
early in the year, man.
especially
Holy,
early. So I expect this year maybe it'll be the opposite. We will
yeah.
turn things around.
Maybe we've
So,
learned something since
yeah.
we've been doing this thing, John.
All
Yeah.
right. Let's keep it going.
Pixel Prognostications.
So we finished off our Pixel Prognostications in 2025. Now we're kicking it off in 2026. Not that many games coming out in January. Speaking of release dates,
It's pretty slim. It's
yeah,
pretty slim in
it's slim
January. Yep.
pickings. So why don't we start off with the game coming out on January 20th, which is Mio Memories in Orbit. We just talked about how it could be a good waiver wire pickup. Um, do you want to do the honors and kick us off here, Marcus?
I can. Like I said, I'm pretty high on this game. I'm going to predict that it will score an 84.
84. I think that's a good target. I'm actually probably a little lower than you. I know I said I have it probably 82 is probably
Okay.
safer. It
Hmm.
feels like one of those low 80 games. I think we're both probably in the same orbit.
Yeah.
Sorry for the pun. When it comes to the score here, yeah, makes sense. It looks beautiful. Like I feel like the number I just gave it is probably closer to its floor. Like I could see the 80 mark being its floor, um, with a mid 80 as kind of the ceiling there. So yeah, and then I'll kick us off with the next one. January 22nd, we have Call to the Lamb Woolhaven DLC coming out. I believe the base game was an 85. Am I wrong about that?
84. I looked it up.
84. Perfect. Okay. Um, so I should apply. See, I want to give it more, but I should apply what we learned in the DLC. Um, DLC episode. I'm gonna say 83.
Okay.
I think the love for this game has only grown since it's come out. And if this is a substantial update, I think it could stay afloat with where it was initially.
I think that's true, but I'm gonna base my prediction on my head, not my heart.
Mm,
So it's going to be, I'm gonna say 80. Maybe
okay.
even split the difference between my head and heart. But yeah,
I thought you were going
go
to say
80.
79. I thought you were going to dip out of the 80s on that one.
Yeah.
This this next one's a little bit tricky. January 29th, we have Karen coming out. You're up first. I don't know what you're going to base
I
this
am.
on. It's a bit of a
Well,
guess.
I was so these devs have done. I'm trying to remember the first game, but their most recent game was Haven, which is
Mm,
kind of like a co-op open world RPG. I think there's some cooking mechanic or crafting mechanics in it. This is nothing like that. So they're kind of going like completely different genre. Karen has been pretty, I don't know, hyped, I guess, like pretty like looking, a lot of people looking forward to this game. It was supposed to come out at the end of last year. They pushed it back a little bit. It's been described as like the Dark Souls of climbing games. So I think that this game actually, oh yeah, and Haven, I didn't even mention. Haven scored only a 75. I looked it
yeah,
up. It's not great. But I think that this is going to kind of outkick that track record. I feel like, and by a decent amount, I could see this game scoring quite well. I'm gonna go 85 for Karen. All that lead up for an 85.
that's where I was. I was at 86.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but 85. Okay, let's do 86 and we'll just take the over under and see where it lands. Okay. Yeah, because that's the
Yeah.
number that popped into my head. If you had gone lower, I would have gone lower. Okay to go 86.
It's been previewed a lot. Like I think they've had demos at least, a couple of Steam Next Fests. Like this game has been out there and people are really looking forward to it. It feels like I'm very curious to see where it ends up. I'm curious to potentially play it. I'm a big, in my real life, I've done some mountaineering and some climbing and, games that feature that sort of thing. I'm all automatically like piques my interest a little bit. I'm a little worried about the difficulty potentially, but that I think can often bode well as we're probably going to start talking about pretty often for these review scores. I think difficult games
Yeah.
do often review quite well. So,
Yeah, if people missed that, we posted on Blue Sky or reposted a YouTube short from Play Watch Listen podcast. For those that don't know, Play Watch Listen has game devs that actually talk about the industry and releases, and they were commenting on the fact that there's this kind of like bias towards higher scores for games that are hard, and finding the right
yep.
sweet spot for a game that's hard but not like punishingly hard can actually be that kind of reward when it comes to actually reviewing games, and then later on things can be adjusted. So
Yep.
interesting, very interesting. See if that holds for this game, if it's as hard as they say
We
it
will
is.
see if it holds. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, again, it is being kind of talked about as the Dark Souls of climbing games.
yeah,
So it's like you're already setting that expectation that it's going to be challenging.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's going to do it for episode 16, the preview of 2026. Just a reminder, if you are looking for tips, tricks, how the rules work for Fantasy Critic, we'd point you back to episode 1 and 2 of Hype Factor, where we really kind of did the overview. That'll be a good starting point if you are new to this. We think they're good listens. They're pretty dense, but I think they'll help you out a lot. Um, so, Marcus, as we close out every time, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
So the easiest way is probably on Blue Sky. My handle over there is Marcus O'Neill 79. I also do two other podcasts, John. So they're not Fantasy Critic related. So they're one is a podcast that focuses mostly on indie games, tiny games in particular. So games that take about 5 hours or less to complete. Or me and my good friend Michael talk about a particular tiny game every other week. So that's a bi-weekly show. And then the second podcast that I do is more recent. It's called Brothers from Another Mothership, or BFAM for short. And me and three other really good friends of ours get together once a month to talk and mostly argue about video games. So,
Yeah, and as for me, you can find me on Blue Sky at John32, or in the BFAM Discord, or in the Tiny Game
yep,
Chronicles Discord. Yeah, go check them
that's
out. You'll
right.
find us there. We usually plug the Fantasy Critic Discord, but today we're going to plug some other ones.
Yep.
Yeah, and also if you'd like to connect with us, you can reach us at Hype Factor on both Blue Sky and X. Send in questions. As always, we'll try and incorporate them into the episode. Also, we're shouting out you guys this time for all those listeners out there as you start going through your drafts. Be sure to share with us on Blue Sky. We'll be looking for them. I know people that have already drafted are starting to post them. Just love seeing that engagement. So yeah, share them with us. We would love to see what you end up picking up. Finally, if you've liked what you've heard from Marcus and I, please consider giving us a positive 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. It's always very much appreciated. And with that, all I got to say is until next time, get hyped. Marcus, run that disclaimer.
Remember, the information provided is for entertainment purposes only. Hype Factor does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any advice or predictions offered. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are solely responsible for any decisions you make based on the information provided. We strongly encourage you to fantasy critic responsibly. And remember, this is just a game, and in no way impacts your status as a gamer. Hype Factor cannot be held responsible for any damages resulting from bad picks, drops, or overall Fs on your season.